Well, hello, and welcome to a new episode of Mark My Words. And I am here today with a really cool guest that I'm very excited about. He has a really interesting path, just going by his LinkedIn profile, looking at what he kind of majored in and was thinking a few years back, and just watching the evolution of his career and knowing a lot about his story just through our conversation before and his LinkedIn and website. Really excited to hear about how Edmund Lee became pain free. That is actually, well, not completely the name of his upcoming book and website. Is actually edispainfree.com. And that's also going to be the name of a book that will be coming out at some point, which I'm sure he will give us some kind of an idea of when that's coming out. But his mission at this point, he will help you to become pain free. He especially, as far as I know, specializes in helping business owners to heal physically, emotionally, and mentally. And he does it naturally. And the natural part is something I'm really excited to hear about. And we could all use a little bit of physical, emotional, and mental healing. Edmund Lee, welcome to Mark My Words. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you being flexible with my crazy schedule and DC traffic and everything else going on. And I'm so glad that I lived up to the fact that we were able to start a couple minutes early. So that's something I'm really happy about. And good to have you here.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Awesome. So, as you know, I like and have a very deep interest in people's career paths because it's really interesting to see what people were thinking at a certain point in their life and already coming in knowing where they're at now or in the present. It's always really fascinating to me to just look at the person that I see today and think about where they might have been before. So, with all that rambling done, I I guess the thing that really stuck out to me and something that I'm thinking probably helps you to some degree with what you're doing today is that at some point you were a psychology and social behavior major and you're grinning a little bit. How did that
How'd you
come
find
out?
that?
What was that?
Yeah, I'm grinning a little bit.
Yeah, so explain what like kind of got you passionate enough to major in psychology and social behavior.
The interesting thing was I wasn't always majored in that, to be honest. I started off as a biology major in college. I had thought, back then I thought I wanted to be an optometrist. So I go to optometry school, go for a few more years, get the degree, and then be an optometrist. And then I found out, probably about two years into college, this isn't for me. It wasn't something that I was necessarily passionate about, back then. As I was sitting in those biology classes and those chemistry classes, and especially, what did it for me was the organic chemistry classes. I don't know if you know anything about organic chemistry, but for me, that entire subject did not make sense, and that was probably what changed my entire route right there. Was the moment I was in organic chemistry. It's like I knew right then, the moment I was sitting in those lecture halls, it did not make any sense, and my grades pretty much showed it too for that subject.
I think if I knew anything about organic chemistry and had any kind of passion, I doubt I would be sitting here talking to you right now. I'd be off in a lab somewhere solving something. Like, I don't even know what organic chemistry is, really. But yeah, I mean, it fascinates me that you just kind of, it's almost like you flew by the seat of your pants and said, optometry, boom, I'm gonna get into this. Is
You
that
bet.
kind of how it was?
It kind of was, it's like one of my, because I have three older sisters, right? And so my youngest sister at that time, she was going to, so that was something that she was interested in, optometry and, going to optometry school. So like me being the youngest out of my entire family, right? So I had three older sisters and then I'm the youngest. I was like, oh, what do I do? And so I was just like, okay, we're going to go this route. We're going to go towards optometry, and so it's like, that was just kind of part of my discovery phase at that young age in terms of figuring out what I wanted to do. And so, a few years in, I decided, hey, that's obviously it's not something that I'm meant to be doing. Otherwise, my grades would be showing that it is something that I'm supposed to be doing. But also, secondly, I wasn't even passionate about it. It wasn't something that interested me. It wasn't something that clicked. And so at that point, I was just trying to search, what am I going to do next? And so it was almost like by accident, almost, that I went into psychology and social behavior, because I was more interested in just how things work, how people's minds work, the psychology of everything. But to be completely honest, back then, I was a single guy, so I was more interested in, hey, what do I got to learn in order to, like, be able to interact better with girls? And so that was, to be honest, that was really the main reason.
Hey, that's not a bad motivation when you're at that point in your life. So I can understand. And me being kind of the nerd that I am, I'm just thinking, boy, if I had any kind of passion for optometry, I would just kind of envision somebody just being fascinated and reading up on online, about how the retina works, or you know how you get cataracts and things like that, like just digging in really deep. Because when I think about my field and how I got into what I'm doing, I mean, I always had, from like a real young age, I would take TVs apart and like would look inside of them, and I had a real interest. And obviously you can't really take your eye apart because there's no return from that. But I just really, it always fascinates me, like what motivates and what goes through people's minds. Because for me, my motivation was I need to learn more about how TV gets on the air. I need to know more about, like, I know at a certain age, I was like, are these people even real? Like, this is like pretty magical what I'm seeing. Like, how do they make this possible? I can remember watching MTV and just being like, okay, is Whitney Houston like really like real? Like, she can't be real. All this stuff can't be real. And I really remember thinking things like that. And it's that kind of curiosity that got me into the field that I'm in now. So that's really amazing to me. So okay, so you picked this, flew by the seat of your pants, found out, okay, this is too deep for me. This is just not for me in general. So what did you get into after that?
after the after the biology or
After,
what part?
well, okay, so optometry,
Uh-huh.
biology, and then biology wasn't your thing either.
Right, right. It wasn't. And then at that point in time, I was searching for a different major. And, I just picked, I specialize in psychology and social behavior. And that's what I ended up finishing my degree in college.
And then during that time, as you were going through that major, were you thinking, wow, I can really see myself, digging into this deeper post college? Or was it just like, this, this is still work for me to at least finish? Like, what were you thinking?
I was thinking about girls. Come on.
So you had a lot of women in the psychology and social behavior major, I'm guessing.
There was more interaction than, the other major. The other major, I was just, in lecture halls and like labs and in the library studying all the time. The other one gave, it gave a lot more freedom, just a lot more, just being able to live life and enjoy. And
Yeah,
so that
I
was the
mean,
main thing.
I am cutting you off, first of all, so apologies for that.
That's okay.
Second of all, I remember in like the one sociology class I took, and I may have taken psychology. I think I dropped out of psychology because I was like, no, this is just way too intricate for me. So I do remember sociology being fun. I feel like there were a lot of like group activities in that class, and I'm guessing it was full of that kind of group activity and interaction, correct?
Some of them were, yeah. They were. I'm trying to remember back because it was a while, it was a while ago, but it seemed, most of the because it was a big university, it was UC Irvine, and so a lot of the classes or lecture halls, they were at least like 300 people. So it wasn't really
Wow.
until you went into like the discussions or or some of the classes were actually smaller, like maybe like 30, 40 people. So yeah, that's when I had like a little bit more interaction, more personal interaction.
Wow, so that tells me I went to a much smaller school. I actually went to more than one school, but I know Penn State Berks campus, so it wasn't like the main campus in oh god, what am I thinking of? Not College Park, that's Maryland. Uh, Wherever the main campus is, I'm blanking, which is terrible at the moment. I'll have to look that up while I'm talking, but I went to one of the branch colleges of Penn State, and it's much smaller groups of people, and you get to know people on a much more personal level. State college, so that's what they call it, state college.
That's not the same thing as Penn. So you were part of Penn State, but it was like a separate branch, you said.
Yeah, so the Penn State Berks campus I went to was in Berks County, which is where I'm from in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And then they have state college. So all over the state, they have like Penn State Lehigh, Penn State. Oh man, I don't even want to guess like all the different ones because I can't confirm necessarily, and frankly, I don't want to spend the whole time looking that up while we're talking here. Our time is valuable.
Right.
So just to cut to the chase, I went to that college and then I wound up going to Kutztown University, which is much bigger. It's more of a traditional university situation. But even then, most of the classes I was in, I doubt had 200 to 300 people. That's the kind of thing I only picture seeing in like a movie, not in my real life. So how was that like? Like what's that like to go to that big of a class?
It was fine because I mean, you could walk in, you could walk in whenever you wanted, you could walk out whenever you wanted, and the thing is, nobody would know or nobody would blink an eye, or like you could just kind of walk into the lecture hall. You can get there early too, and as everybody gets in, it's almost like you're just one out of many, so you can blend in as much as you want. But if you wanted to stand out, I mean, there are ways to do it. You just have to raise your hand a lot more or participate in discussions outside of lecture.
So it's not like schools that I went to and classes I was in where they might have noticed that I stepped out and they're like, well, I see Mr. Schmidt is really interested in this class today or this topic. Or,
Hmm.
obviously they don't come down on you too hard because, well, you're paying them. So very interesting to get that perspective from somebody. I don't know if I've ever asked that of anybody or have known anybody who's been in that big of a class. So just to kind of keep everything moving, because I do want to actually get to where you're at in modern times. So you wound up majoring in psychology, social behavior. You graduate. What were you thinking at that point?
You know what? I was around a lot of at that time I was doing a lot of networking and then I was getting exposed to a lot of marketing. And so I was part of different marketing organizations and networking clubs. And then sometime after college, I ended up starting a company with my brother-in-law at that point in time. So it was more like a digital signage type company. So I did that for probably a good like 4 or 5 years. That was a really big learning experience. And then from that point on, I transitioned more into the online space. doing social media branding and social media consulting. And so I did that all the way up until about 2014, until right before I went into the dry cleaning business.
You basically did that right up until social media like really boomed and took off, I guess, huh?
You bet. You bet.
So you were around it during like its infancy and you kind of grew with it during that time period. What was that experience like for you?
I'd say that was an interesting experience because at that point in time, everything it was just kind of it had already taken off, but it was becoming more and more people were kind of being interested in it. They knew that that was where you had to be. And so the interesting thing about that was, I was involved in it and I saw it grow, I saw my presence grow, I saw everybody else's presence grow. And it was one of those things where it was it was still in a time where it wasn't completely saturated yet, where you could actually put out a message and people would be more receptive. Whereas now you can still do that. It's just a lot more. There's a lot more noise to it nowadays. And so that's actually one of the reasons why I stepped out of that industry, is because it was too much noise for me. There's too many. It was almost like I was being pulled in so many different directions. I was on Facebook, I was on Twitter, I was on LinkedIn, I was on Pinterest, I was on Google Plus and um, whatever other platform, but those were the main ones that I was on at that time. At that time, Instagram hadn't even taken off yet, so we were still fairly early, but it was one of those things where I enjoyed it up to a point where it started just being too consuming and it wasn't enjoyable at that point in time. And then so once it stopped being enjoyable, I was just kind of like, you know what, I'm not liking this anymore. It's like it's kind of draining. And it's like it felt like an obligation to have to be online at that point in time. And so at that point in time, like some opportunities started to pop up. And then I said, hey, you know what? I'm just gonna roll with it. I'm gonna take a leap of faith and I'm gonna roll with it and see what those opportunities present. And so that's what I did in 2014 when I decided to step into the dry cleaning business.
And I can totally understand where you're coming from because I actually have tried dipping my toe into the social media world, like actually trying to work within it. And I have kind of, at some point, a question of just how you managed to make this transition so smoothly. But I'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, go for it.
'Cause I so I don't know how much I told you about my story when we did our pre-production chat, but I know in 2016 the company I was with, they went through a restructuring phase, and as a part of that phase, they offered a lot of buyout packages to people who have been with the company for a while. And that point in my life is what built me up to eventually being where I'm at today, talking to you. And it was like a real fork in the road. I wound up taking the package, but at that point, I was like, okay, what am I going to do now? Like, I'm obviously going to stay in my field somewhat since that's my niche. That's what I'm known for, I guess. Not to sound like a celebrity or anything, but that's kind of like my thing. I work in TV and the IT TV stratosphere. So, but I wanted to do something else. Like I wanted to just get a feel for other things. So I started volunteering in social media and just doing a lot of like I took classes on social media and I also had a very short-lived job doing social media. Like it was very short-lived. I won't certainly won't tell you what it was or who it was with, but I found out very quickly that it was like a really harsh environment. So I was like, okay, after a day or two, I'm like, no thanks. And really, when you're talking about some of your experiences, the thing that I learned is just how harsh of I guess a career path social media can be when you really put yourself into it. And I see you nodding your head like, you can relate, and it became less fun for you. And I know it became less fun for me. Even the volunteer job that was a lot of fun and was actually pretty fulfilling, it became eventually not as much fun because it's just such a cutthroat kind of business at this point. Like, you just always gotta be on, and you always gotta be up with what's going on, both within social media and just what's going on with your brand. So I don't know if that was your experience, but that was mine.
This was all in 2016, correct?
And this is actually like through the past few years. Like, I did the volunteer job for about a year. This was what year was it? I think it was 2018, 2019. And then the one or two jobs that I tried out for, they were around that time. So it was just a real learning experience, and I took the classes around that time. So I'll let you continue speaking to what's on your mind.
Yeah. What did you want me to share, or what do you want me to cover right now?
Well, it looked like you were nodding your head in agreement to what I was saying about how intense the social media business can be, unless you were just following what I was telling you.
I was following what you were saying, but I was also agreeing. It
Okay,
can be,
cool.
yeah. It can be, it can be kind of, intense in the sense that it takes up a lot of time and different energy. You know, at least for me back then, because I was on so many different platforms, and then I was, there's so many different followers as well. Like so much. I had a huge audience that I was engaging with, and so with that, as part of being a social media consultant and doing branding and stuff like that, I kind of had to set the example, in terms of, um, looking the par, or even like creating content at that point in time. So there's, at least on Facebook, if I can remember correctly, I was probably putting out at least like 8 posts a day. 8 posts a day. It's a combination of mostly graphics with text on it. Some just text only, but a lot of graphics and text. That was really big at that time. And then just interacting a lot on Facebook, and then even on Twitter. I was doing lots of tweets. There's the strategies back then were completely different than present day. But back then, lots of tweets going out, lots of DMs or direct messages, lots of interactions with people. Um, Even on LinkedIn, same thing. So strategies, they change over time. That stuff that worked in the past, it might not be as effective present day.
And when somebody listens to you say 8 posts a day or whatever, they may think that that's not a lot, but that actually is a lot. That's a
That's a
lot of
lot when
work.
everything's custom.
Yeah.
Everything was custom created, custom branded. Yeah.
So jumping back, remarkably, I remembered to go back to what I was saying like 5 minutes ago, but I'm interested just kind of following on that. I know I personally have dabbled off and on, especially the past few years, with trying to make some kind of career transition. And it sounds like you've been able to do stuff like that with pretty much with ease. And that's coming from an outside observer. What was your experience just coming out of college with that major, and you're like, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have a business, and then I'm going to get into social media. What was that like for you?
It was a unique experience in the sense that I think I'm a little bit more adventurous. So that by being able to jump into different endeavors like that, I think it fulfilled, in a sense, like that part of me that wanted to be able to experience life or try new things or see the world. And so that's a part that's still with me even today, which I'm thankful for. Um, and so that that was probably something that I don't know if most people have that. Some people, I think maybe they're okay with being in like one set career or one set job, but that was never me. Me, I was just I wanted to try as many different things as possible.
I feel like I'm a lot like that. I just feel like in my adult life, in my actual post college life, I have not been able to pull that off successfully. Just I've had things that I've been really interested in, like social media, becoming a freelance writer. These are things I've tried since I've been away from, or should say, left that corporate job that offered me the awesome package that they offered me. And I just, I think partly because of just my niche, I'm kind of like pigeonholed into that whole stratosphere, for lack of a better word at this point, and just have had a hard time with that. So it's really cool to me that you've been able to just say, okay, I want to do this now, and have been successful with it. Because I know pre college, I know I had a few years where I was really trying to find myself. And I did everything from working at woodworking factories to selling furniture to working in electronics at retail stores. So I tried. I mean, I think I was even a plumber's apprentice for a while. So I tried all kinds of things and had a lot of success jumping around and discovering. And I think you and I are probably somehow kindred spirits in that way. To be adventurous in that way. We just want to discover and try different things. And I think that's really cool. That's what life is all about, I think.
Right, it is for sure.
So, so getting a little more into modern times. So, you started your dry cleaning business after social media, and what motivated that passion for you?
There was no passion in that. It was just, hey, I wanted to change the scenery at that point in time. So like an opportunity came up with, with a buddy of mine, and we had the opportunity to purchase a couple of dry cleaners, and we said, hey, let's roll with it.
Awesome. So you started up this dry cleaning business, and reading some of your material, it kind of gave me a vision. And this is something I've been really interested in with you, because I saw that you had the business, but I also saw that you said you worked in this environment and people were growing concerned about the chronic pain that you were going through and some of those things that, those issues. But now talking to you, it's like, okay, you had a group of buddies that you collaborated with to open this business. So that kind of puts a different perspective on it. And I feel like this is the point where I give you the wheel to kind of tell the story and just the evolution of how all this came about for you.
Definitely. And I guess to kind of sum up the point that we are doing before, I've always been, all the things I've always been doing, I've always been kind of adventurous, wanting to try different things, and everything kind of always led back to, hey, it's like there's got to be like more of a reason for why I'm here on this earth, in terms of what I'm doing. There's got to be some purpose, some passion to it. And so that was kind of always the basis of, what I was doing in the past, as I was in different endeavors, and I was like, hey, is this something that's going to help me grow, or is this something that's going to help me continue to discover and move towards the direction of the point where I'm really fulfilled, or where I can contribute to the world? And so that was one of the things where I transitioned away from social media at that point in time, because I wasn't getting the sense that was there anymore. And so at that point in time, this was back in 2014, I transitioned into the dry cleaning business. And it was something that I had no experience or any background in at that point in time. But for me, it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to go as far as I can see. And when I get there, I'm going to see a little bit further. And hey, it's like, hey, no harm in getting into this type of business. And so that's what I did back in 2014. And when I got into that business, it was probably one of the more interesting experiences, in my life. If I yeah, interesting in a sense that I didn't, all the stuff that popped up during that business, I did not see any of that stuff coming. It's like, but at the end of the day, it was all worth it. And so I got into that business, in 2014, right after being in social media. And so at that point in time, just to kind of go into the story, at that time I was in what you would say, good health, perfect health. I didn't have any aches. I didn't have any pains. At that point in time, I thought my mindset and my emotional health and everything was good. And it was, because there wasn't any pain. And so what ended up happening was, as I was in that business a little bit longer, probably about, as the years passed in that business, I started to notice more aches and pains in my body. The aches and pains, they weren't immediate, they were more gradual. And they kind of manifested themselves in terms of like, oh, it's like I have a little bit of like joint pain or like muscle tightness. Maybe my like I had some tightness in my thighs, or like, a little bit of tightness in my hip area. Or sometimes like my low back was a little bit stiff, but it wasn't too big of a deal initially, but as the years, as time passed, I started to notice that, hey, that the pain started to get, a little bit worse and a little bit worse with time. And so I was like, what's causing it? It's like, I wasn't too sure at that point in time, but all I knew was that the work environment, the business that I was in, and just the workload and everything that was going on, it started to, looking back on it, it's easy to know what happened. But back then I was like, what's happening? It's like, okay, I figured, okay, maybe it's from maybe the exposure to the chemicals in the dry cleaning business, or maybe it's just the long hours, or the long stress from having the different locations that we're managing. Or maybe it's just, it was a combination of the people, the people that were in the work environment, all the different personalities that were there, or just the fact that environment was always go, 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 go. And so I figured, hey, I'm just going to keep rolling with it. And, the aches and pains, I was seeing different practitioners, I figured, okay, if I got physical pain, I'm going to go see different practitioners when I can. So I saw chiropractors, I saw massage therapists. So I was seeing a chiropractor and massage therapist at one point, regularly, maybe I'm trying to figure out originally I was maybe seeing them maybe like once a month or once every 2 weeks. But as the pain, as I noticed over the years, as the pain started to get worse, I was like, oh, I need a little bit more. I need something to kind of like help me go, help me keep going. And so I had to, I kind of, at some point I upped that to maybe like once a week at some point in time. And so I was seeing a chiropractor, I was seeing a massage therapist, I was seeing rolfers who do like structural integration, to try and manipulate the tissue and the fascia so that you can be a little bit more functionally better. I was seeing that, and then I was seeing alpha biotics. I was seeing acupuncturists. I was changing my diet. I was eating organic. I was drinking more smoothies. I was cutting out. I was drinking filtered water. I was doing a lot of different things. I was doing detoxing. And there's probably a lot more different things that I did, but just for the sake of time, but that's all the things that I did. And then what I found was that as I started to address all the physical aspects, um, my body would get better. But what ended up happening was all these things that I did, they would provide relief, but the relief would be temporary, in the sense that, like, after a day or two or three, or sometimes even a week, like the pains would start to come back. And so it started to get worse with time. And so it got worse to the point where, like, when I was trying to get out of bed, just the simple action of getting out of bed, you would think, hey, it's easy. The alarm, you might wake up to an alarm, you might not. And so for me, I woke up to an alarm back then. And so it's like, I got the alarm clock, and then, I put the alarm clock, on the other side of the room, because, I want to make sure I wake up in the morning time, bright and early. And so that's what I'd be doing. But just when the alarm would go off in the morning, just that simple act of getting up, it would take minutes, because of the pain in my back, and in my joints. And so in the morning, I roll the covers off, and then I figure out how to get out, how to get out of bed. And for me at that point in time, it was different each morning, but at the worst, it would be, hey, I would have to kind of roll out of bed so that my knees and my feet would go on the floor first. And then from there, I would use my arms to be on top of the bed. And then I would try and muster up all my strength just to kind of push myself up. And then once I was up, that was half of the battle, because once I'm standing up, I still have to walk to the other side of the room to get to the alarm clock. And that's when I knew that something was wrong, because my body, early on in the morning time, Yeah, it was stiff. And keep in mind, I was in my mid 30s at that point in time, early to mid 30s. And I was having trouble just moving from one side of the room to the other. And I was taking, baby steps because my joints were aching. It was almost like I was, I joke about this, but like I had people at work. I had a buddy of mine over at work, and he used to like call me, grandpa, because of the way I moved at work. But if he thought I was grandpa at work, then he should have seen me in the morning time, when I was actually waking up, because I was like, it was like, moving baby steps little by little, which is kind of, it's funny, but it's sad, it's sad at the same time, so that's one of the things that I had to endure at that time. And then another thing was just being able to get into a car and getting out of a car. I remember one time getting into the car, it was just like, my back's killing me. And it's just like being able to get into the car, I had to hold the top of the roof of the car just to be able to lower myself down.
Oh gosh.
And it was it was quite the endeavor.
So I have to say, when I listen to you talk versus reading up on some of this stuff, I come to realize I have quite an imagination,
Okay.
because when I read some of the blurbs about being called grandpa, I'm thinking like, okay, this was probably like really offending him. He's probably, you know, putting up his fist and saying, look, don't you keep calling me grandpa here. And, just some of the other stuff. Obviously, I see, the reality is, even though you're very like cool and calm and very just, okay, that happened and that happened and, that definitely sucked. You're just very like cool about it. Whereas when I'm reading your story and envisioning it, it's all just very like dramatic. So I don't know if that's just the way you personally are telling it, or if that's the reality that I'm hearing is just, it sucked. It was a struggle, but, you just keep going and you keep going until you figure out what the answer is, as opposed to like, oh my God, just, the drama of it. So maybe you can speak for yourself on some of that.
Definitely. It's a lot easier looking back at it present day and looking back at the past and laughing at it. Even back then when I was in the paint, yeah, it sucked. It sucked a lot. And there were some days, I was crying or I was grimacing. Yeah, but the thing is, like I said, like my mindset was very strong. And I had this innate ability to be able to spin situations where even when they look really grim or like I was agonizing in pain, like one time I couldn't even move my neck. There's a period of time where I could not move my neck, and
Wow.
if I had to I remember being at the cleaners and my customers were just looking at me like, are you okay? Because to be able, I couldn't even do this and I couldn't do
Wow.
that. All I could do was this, right? And like if I had to like move around the shop, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna like shift my whole body. It
So
was terrible.
so what was the solution to the problem?
The solution was it wasn't, all the physical stuff. I was doing all the physical stuff like I mentioned earlier, right? To address it, like chiropractic, the massage therapist, and all that stuff. That stuff fixed it temporarily, but it wasn't until I started dealing with the emotional aspects. That's when I started to see more results. But the thing is, I didn't figure that out until a couple of years in of experimenting all these different modalities. And I didn't figure it out until a couple of years in when I just got so sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like you have to get that, like, we had the business was really busy and we had help. But the thing is, at a certain time, at a certain point in time, it's like I felt, because of all the long hours and all the the commitments that we had, I felt trapped in a sense. So there was like no escape from it. And I did my best to put a spin on it, a positive spin on it, and just to keep going until there was a way to to finish the project that we had committed to from the beginning. And so it wasn't until a couple years in that I reached a point where I was just like, you know what? It's like I'm just gonna throw up my hands. It's just like, I tried everything. I tried all the traditional routes, and none of this stuff is working. It's like I gotta look for more non-traditional modalities or non-traditional methods in terms of changing my situation or being able to fix my physical body.
So you were never diagnosed with anything, or, you know, it was never actually defined. It was just something that you discovered was an emotional thing through the career path that you had taken. And maybe I'm not understanding right, but am I am I close on that in that regard?
So let me make sure I'm getting this straight. So you're asking if there was anything that I was diagnosed with, right?
Yeah.
So back then, I was because I didn't see anybody, because there was just too much going on, just too much work going on, long hours. So it was one of those things where, yeah, it's like I had like neck pain, neck tightness, low back tightness, stiffness, achiness in my shoulder. I could bear it. My joints were stiff in the morning and most of the day. I had brain fog. I had like my mind was racing half the time. By racing, it's like we have because we were averaging over 100 120 new customers each month, right, in the
Wow.
particular store that I was in. And so it got to the point where the phone was ringing all the time, like people messaging us on like Yelp and Google all the time, new people rolling into the cleaners, like throughout the whole day, right? And so it's just go 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 go. And so you would think that even you would think that as a business that would be something you'd be like, yes, it's good,
Yeah.
and it is. It's like but it got to the point where I think there was something up with my mindset at the time, or just the stress. It was just like when that would happen, I'd just be like, you know what, it's like it's like, when's this gonna stop? When's this gonna stop? It's like too much, too much business, too many people coming in. And it got to the point where like somebody would be coming into walking through the front door, and I'd be like, it's like, because if they come in, they have more clothes. If they have more clothes, that means more work, which
Right.
is a good problem to have, but like at that point in time, I knew that, something wasn't right, because I was starting to see my customers and I was starting to see all the business as like, oh, it's like a burden or as a stress, when it shouldn't be, and so that was part of like the panic or like the anxiety that I was dealing with at that time. And so it was at that time that I was like, okay, something's got to change. And I started kind of searching, and I started looking for other modalities or different approaches to do it, because all the stuff that I was doing on the physical level wasn't working. And so that's when I started addressing the emotional aspects of it. And by emotional, what I mean is dealing with the stressors that were happening in my work environment. And that's what I started to do.
And so when you started to address that particular aspect, you found that you were starting to feel better?
Yes. So as I started to heal my emotional pain and my mental pain and my spiritual pain, as I started to work on those aspects, I noticed that my physical pain started to get better. So the aches and pains, they started to decrease, and the aches and pains, what would have bothered me in the past, they didn't really bother me anymore. So like the treatments that I was getting with chiropractors and massage therapists and acupuncturists and rolfers, and like even all my dietary changes, that stuff started to have more of a positive effect as I started to make those, as I started to address the emotional aspects and the mental aspects. And so that's when I knew I was onto something. And another way that I knew I was onto something was because the work environment that I was in, what used to be very, very stressful, it as time passed, it was no longer stressful anymore. So even though it was the same amount of phone calls, the same amount of inquiries, the same amount of customers, if not actually more customers coming in, I wasn't phased by it anymore. It was almost like I was just like calm. The anxiety started to, go down. It's like my mind was clear. It was just like calm and peaceful. And it didn't really matter what was going on. It didn't matter if like people around me were like, stressed out, or it's like, it was just like go, 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 go. I was like, for me, I was just like, calm. And that's when I knew I was onto something, because I had done so much stuff to address all the things that were stressing me out emotionally. Like maybe some of the unresolved issues or unresolved stressors that I was experiencing, with the other people in the work environment or with my perspective on the work environment or even my relationships with people outside of the work environment. All those things as I started to address the emotional, then all that stuff became very, very calm and another interesting thing started to happen as well. As I started to address the emotional part, my circumstances started to change. So you remember how I mentioned earlier, it's like after, I felt like I was stuck in that work environment, just working morning to night, nonstop, go, 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 go. And so as I started to address the emotional aspects and as I started to calm down and be at peace with it all, my circumstances started to change. So by the end of what is it? We're in 2021 right now. So by 2020, the business we ended up finding a buyer for the business and our different locations and ended up selling. And so
Wow.
that was something that we had been trying to do. We had been thinking about doing and we had been trying for a little bit of time, but it wasn't until 2020 that actually happened. And the funny thing is that lined up perfectly with when I made that shift in myself.
Wow. So by that point, so business is sold, and you then found yourself being a free agent. And basically, at that point, I'm guessing that's when Ed is Pain Free was born.
In a sense, I took a little bit of time. I took what is it? I took about 2 to 3 months off. And to be honest, Ed is pain free. That kind of started as more. It wasn't something that was planned, you know, mainly because in order to do what I'm doing right now, that would have meant that I would have to come back online and I would have to be back in the social media space and more in the public eye. And that was something back when I left that industry in 2014 that I kind of thought to myself, I'm not going to come back here. There's no reason to come back online. And so for me to to be able to make that step to come back, it kind of took a little bit more, because I already knew what was, just to be online. There's a whole level of commitments that you got to make.
Yeah, and that's exactly talk about coming full circle on that topic. I mean, you and I both kind of laid it out there just with my little bit of experience and your much bigger experience. I mean, social media is a huge commitment and you can burn out on it pretty easy. So I can't blame you for having that perspective. So as Pain Free is born and you started writing a book, what exactly were the steps for you? Like what was like a eureka moment? I should write a book about my experience. How did all that come about?
So that ties in with why I came back online. It had to do with my experience at the dry cleaner, where I started off in perfect health. I had no pain, and then I went through that process, and I started to have a lot of physical pain as a result of all the different factors that were going on around me, with all the stressors, and then my journey from having all that pain to searching for years and years, right? Experimenting, trying out different things, trying to figure out what worked, what didn't work, and then eventually like cracking the code and finding out what actually does work and then being able to fix myself. So that's what brought about the Ed is Pain Free, both the book and also what I'm doing today, is because I was looking back at what I did and I was like, hey, it's like I can use the experience that happened to me in the past to be able to help others, present day, who are also suffering with pain. The pain could be really small, but like for me, my specialty is working with individuals who are experiencing physical, emotional, and mental pain, but who've experienced it for at least 10 years. So 10 years, right? And who have tried what may seem like everything, but they still haven't gotten results. So that's kind of what my target audience is, because I like the severe cases, I like the challenges. And I figure, if I can help those individuals, then I can help anybody. And so that's more in line with my heart's purpose. And that kind of brings it back to, the beginning part where, hey, they had to take something to be able to bring me back to the online space. And so this was it, to be able to serve other people, and, serve other people who might be experiencing pain in whatever different manner that they're experiencing. And it's probably more prevalent now in, 2020 and 2021 than it was before, because of what's happening in the world right now. And there's a lot of stress that people are experiencing nowadays. And so that's what brought me more out in order to be able to serve other people.
So, with all this being said, do you feel as if you finally found that thing, that passion, that thing that just really you walk away from helping somebody and you just have this real like energy? Because I'm just I am just getting tongue tied here. This is the result of me being up since like 3 in the morning. What I'm trying to say is, I know when I do this podcast, like right now, this is an awesome conversation. And when I press stop and I hang up and I go on and make dinner, I'm going to have a whole different energy than I had before we started the conversation. And that's because I feel like I found like a real passion with this just from talking to people like you. And I guess the question that I was trying to ask, getting all scrambled in my mind here, is, does your business, what you're doing today, does that give you like a similar feeling?
I would say for right now, yes. It's what I, the thing I realized when I was in the dry cleaning business towards the end is that it doesn't matter what you're doing. It doesn't matter what you're doing in life. What matters more is how you do it. And so when it comes to doing your passion or doing something that fulfills you, somebody can be stuck in a job that they don't like, or a career that they don't like, or doing something that they don't like. And they have the ability to change their circumstances at any time. So like in my particular situation, when I was at the dry cleaners, I felt like I was trapped, and I didn't enjoy that situation. But I made a shift at a certain point in time where I realized it's not about what I'm doing. So by what I'm doing, I was doing the same mundane thing over and over, day after day, morning to night. I was working with customers. I was taking in their clothes. I was checking for stains. Their clothes stunk. Some clothes stink. Others don't. It's like you gotta unbutton everything. You gotta put tape on it if they have stains, and then you gotta make sure they get clean, and then they come back, and then the clothes come back, and after they're clean, and then you gotta organize it, and then it's like cleaning up your room, except you do it every single day. It's like the Groundhog Day movie, It's like you're experiencing the same thing day after day after day. That's what my life was like at that point in time. And so it was depressing at that point in time. But I made a shift. When the shift happened, when I realized it's not about what I'm doing, it's about how I'm doing it. And so I made that shift with everything that I was doing on a day-to-day basis. The shift happened when I was working with customers. I no longer saw them as numbers. I no longer saw them as, like burdens that are just giving me more work to do, because it was no longer about what it was I was doing. It was about how I was doing it. So by how, it's like when I saw them, I would greet them, and I would make a heart-to-heart connection with them. I would find the gold in the interaction. I would look for the gold. I would find the good in people. I would find the good in the situation when communicating with them, when talking with them. Even in the mundane tasks that I was doing throughout the day, I would find the joy. I would find the good in what I was doing. And I would realize that the work that I was doing, however mundane it was serving a bigger purpose. It was helping my customers to be able to look better, to feel better, to be able to do their job or their career in a way that could, serve other people or to bring themselves more fulfillment. So it's no longer about what I was doing, but how I was doing it. And so when it comes back to full circle to what I'm doing today, I could be doing Ed is pain free. I could be doing something else, but I kind of come full circle to realize that it's not about what I'm doing. It's about how I'm doing it. And for me, it's how I'm able to serve other people and to be able to bring light into other people's lives and to be able to make that change in their lives so that they can see that, when they start to make those changes internally, that they can start to change their external circumstances. And by changing their external circumstances, it could be something as simple as, hey, being able to get rid of all the physical pain that's in their body, or being able to get rid of all the emotional trauma that they have stored up in their body, that they haven't dealt with. Maybe there's like relationships in the past with like family or their mom or their dad, or like past unresolved trauma, or like trauma that they have at work that they haven't necessarily resolved. And if they haven't resolved it yet, then it's manifesting as like trapped energy in their body. And so if I can help them in that way to deal with that and to release it, then they're going to start to they're going to start to be able to release that physical pain. And then perhaps they'll even be able to step into that space where they're starting to do something. They change the perspective on life, and then they're able to change what it is that they're doing in life. It could be a job, it could be a career path, or they could even still be doing the same thing that they're doing, but they just make that shift in their perspective to the point where it's not about what they're doing anymore, but it's how they're doing it, and the way how they're doing it is in alignment with their heart's purpose.
I think what you just said, the core of the meaning behind all of this, is incredibly wise. And the timing on this episode is really weird because I was listening, just cooking dinner last night, listening to my 80s playlist. It's like 1,000 songs long, it's ginormous. But a song popped up that I don't hear all that often and never really thought about the meaning of it until last night. It's a song by Bananarama of all people, and I think it's with a group called the Fun Boys. I could be wrong on the name of the group they collaborated with, but exactly what you were saying, like the core of your message is not the thing that you're doing, is the way that you're doing it. And they say that line like over and over in the song even. And I was thinking about it last night. I'm like, there's something to the message of this song. Like somehow I feel like I need to be absorbing this right now. And rather than, oh, this is just a fun, catchy song, I'm like, this is actually kind of wise. And you're saying the exact thing like
Interesting.
the exact same thing 24 hours later. I'm like, okay, somehow I need to be hearing this right now. And I probably do. I just think absorbing that with your story is very true, and I think it's very wise. And I think for me personally, so I talked about being energized when I do an episode, and this is why I get so energized. It's not just because I'm doing a podcast and putting my name out there and whatever. It's because of the messages and the people that I'm meeting. Is how I guess how I'm running the show that really makes it what it is for me, and just who I'm bringing on is how I'm doing it, as opposed to just I'm doing a podcast. Like, who cares that I'm doing a podcast? It's the content and what I'm getting out of it. That's really, what gets results, which is a line from that song that they keep saying, that's how you get results. And wow, I just really, I love how full circle and how this is really hitting me right now. But
It's
And
funny how things work out.
yeah, just look, your story is incredibly inspirational, and you have so much wisdom, and really amazing that you didn't have this thought process of, oh, I gotta define this, I gotta go to the doctor. You sorted this out on your own. Basically, you looked within to figure out what what is this, like, how can I resolve that? And now you're spreading that wisdom to your clients. You're doing that through your upcoming book, which I we don't know when that's coming out, but I can't wait to hear more from you. I think you have a lot to offer and incredibly wise.
Thank you, Mark.
And at that point, I am curious to know, so we know about Ed is Pain Free. Is there any other way that people can get a hold of you for your wisdom and your guidance on how to become pain free?
Yeah, definitely. So the book, the Ed is Pain Free book, that'll be released sometime in the future right now. So that book, what it's going to contain is it's going to contain it's going to contain, it's going to highlight my journey from beginning to end, and it's going to showcase all the different things that I tried, both the things that worked and didn't work. And just because it worked for me or it didn't work for me, it doesn't, it's not really like one set thing that's gonna, just because like this is what worked for me or it didn't work for me, it doesn't mean it's gonna work for you or it doesn't work for you. It's one of those things where it's like it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle. It's like a puzzle piece that you have to put together, and so each person's going to be a little bit different in terms of their situation. But in terms of my book, it's going to highlight all the different modalities that I tried, what worked for me and what didn't work, why I think it worked, and then why I think it didn't work. And then how I bring in all the emotional aspect and the mental aspect and the spiritual aspect into that to tie it all in to make it work better. And then another thing that's going to be highlighted in the book is case studies. So clients that I've worked with who've also had success in their lives. And so up until this point, I've worked with different people, and there's been numerous success cases. Um, like one guy, one lady, like she was having memory issues. She's in her like she was having difficulty recalling, just remembering things and recalling information. And so that was affecting her business and her ability to take on new projects and take on new clients and to do presentations with just full confidence. And so with her, within literally a week of working together, we were able to identify what was going on in her life and what was the cause of that, what was the root cause. And just through, a few simple tweaks, we were able to create a huge shift in her where she was able to get past this brick wall, right? And to be able to figure out that, oh, hey, like a trauma, like emotional trauma from the past, right? Something that occurred from 10 years ago, but also something that occurred from childhood was something that was actually one of the things that was contributing to her memory loss or her inability to be able to remember things.
Wow.
And so that was just one specific case. There's numerous others that I've had so far as well. Like one gentleman, like he was within literally 2 weeks of working together, right? Like he's a body worker, and so when he's working with his clients, right away within 2 weeks, he was able to be more present. He didn't have that mind chatter or that racing thoughts anymore. So when he was working with his clients, he was able to be more calm and relaxed and more present. And so that was translating to, better results when he was working with his clients. So they were getting like 100% of him versus just like 75% of him. And so I was translating to better results. And then because of that, his clients are staying with him longer or seeing him for more sessions. But like a crazy thing happened as a result of working together. And this was not something that we expected, but it was just something that happened. Was after about 2 weeks, this gentleman, he used to be waking up in the middle of the night just to use the restroom 4 or 5 times a night. And so after addressing some of the emotional things that were going on, as well as some other things, that decreased to only waking up in the middle of the night, maybe like once a night. or
Wow.
sometimes none. And so that was something that we didn't expect, but it just happened. And
So to come full circle on all of this, do you find that that background in psychology and sociology, do you find that that helps you with your interactions today running this business?
I'd say so. The background with the psychology and social behavior, it helped in terms
Wow.
of, everything's connecting with other people. And so I would say yes, it did, in terms of being able to tune into other people and just kind of do my best to listen. Listening can be different ways. It can be listening with my ears or just kind of more intuition to see what it is that they might need at that specific point in time. Because everybody needs something different in terms of where they're at in their own life.
I couldn't agree more. And speaking of our own lives, we've gone, I think, a little over an hour here. So, look, this was a ton of fun and really interesting and very inspiring to me. And I'm so glad that you are now pain free. And I am glad that you're putting yourself out there and spreading all this wisdom. People need you. I mean, I have no physical pain at all, really, which is amazing since I'm 42, but really don't have much physical pain. But even for somebody like me, I feel like I'm getting a ton of value from hearing you speak and talk about your journey. And I could not be more thankful that you took some time to be on this show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark.
So, I don't know if you have anything else that you wanted to add before we go.
Yeah, sure. So right now I'm still doing my beta coaching program right now. And so anybody's welcome to join that right now. And so they can sign up on my website, www.edispainfree.com. Again, that's www.edispainfree.com, or they can also message me on Instagram as well, edispainfree. And so the beta coaching program, what it is it's a completely free program right now. And so I've been limiting that, so I've been rolling that out. So I just finished my first batch of clients that I'm working with, right, in the beta coaching program. And then I'm going to be opening up my next one to the next set of 5 as well, that I'm going to be testing out all the stuff that I did on myself with them to be able to just streamline it to see if I can get those results quicker. And so that's what I've been doing. So right now that program is open, and if anybody wants to sign up, they can just go to the website or they can message me on Instagram as well. And so for that program, what it is anybody who's in extreme debilitating pain, maybe they tried everything, or they tried what they may think seems like everything, but they still haven't gotten any results, you know, reach out to me. We'll see what we can do.
Awesome. Well, hey, I have no doubt that you're going to pick up a lot of interest and a lot of folks are going to get a lot of value from what you're doing. So, again, Edmund Lee, Ed is pain free. Thank you so much for being on Mark My Words. I am Mark Schmidt, and I will be back soon with a new episode. Goodbye for now.